Hello friends, I'm Colonel Failure, and this, quite obviously, is Transport Fever 2. Now, I've made a couple of videos on this game, and therefore I know a thing or two about it. Don't know if you've seen them or not, but there are several, and some of them are moderately entertaining. Anyway, once in a while I'll get a comment from someone who says, I've picked up the game, and I always go bust in no time at all. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to not go bust in no time at all. I'm going to assume you've made it as far as setting up a game, but just in case you haven't, we're going to go into free game because that gives you the most opportunity to get into trouble. Medium map size will do us just nicely. There aren't a huge number of towns on here, but for this demonstration it will do absolutely fine. We'll stick in some kind of repeatable seed here so that we get a map that we're all useful, and it's going to be not going bust. There we go. That's going to generate up some goodness for us, and then we'll go and get started. We're going to start in 1850 with medium difficulty. Easy difficulty is not difficulty at all. No, it just isn't. Medium difficulty is absolutely fine. These tips that I'm about to give you will get you through no problem. Trust me, I'm a colonel. Well, I'm not. I use the name, and therefore that sounds sort of trustworthy. Yeah. Ignore the failure part of things. I mean, that's just, should we get on with it? Alright, when loading up the game, you're confronted with this top-down view. The best thing to do is to pause to get started, because otherwise the game will keep rattling forward and you'll be none the wiser as to what's going on. What we're looking for is easy opportunities to begin with. Now, in terms of passengers, given that we're working with wagons here, you're going to need stuff that's actually fairly close together. Thorpe St Andrew to Queenbury in Sheppey, they might actually work out. They might be close enough. Because we're using horse-drawn vehicles, they don't move very quickly. So we'll set up a passenger route there initially, because passenger routes take the least faffing around and will quite often pay for themselves quite quickly. So let's make this as simple as can be. We'll go into the centre of town here in what I'm calling Queenborough, because that's its name. And we'll go into the roads tour, buildings, and then we don't need a full stop for this one. We'll just use a straightforward bus stop. Now make sure you've chosen a side of the road that is sensible in some fashion. Either, in this case, because we've got this square that the wagons will go around. So we'll start out there, right? And then we want something down at the other end as well. Now these two are a reasonable distance apart, and distance is very important because, well, for two reasons. Firstly, the further they are apart, the longer it's going to take to get there. Secondly, however, the further they are apart, the more money you'll make. So it's a balancing act between how long do you want to wait for the money to come in and how much money do you want to make. The other thing to bear in mind is that all profits are calculated on the straight line point-to-point difference, the as the crow flies route there. And as you can see, we've got an almost straight run to get up there. Yeah, it wiggles a bit, but it's almost a straight run, so we're not going to lose that much time. If I wanted to invest a little bit more, creating a straight road between here and there would cut out a little bit of travel time. But in all honesty, it's not going to make that much difference here. Now, I've placed my second stop, and as it stands right now, our wagons are going to come in, they're going to unload, and then they're going to do a U-turn there and head back again. So we want to create a new line. And the first thing to do with a new line is to give it the name that it needs to have. So this is going to be it's going to be a passenger line. So I use PSX for passengers, simply because that's how I like to roll. And we'll call it PSX1 for now. But that's a terrible name for a route. And yeah, because if we've got 15 passenger lines, then PSX13. Do you remember where that goes? No. You want something of a name so that you can actually remember exactly how that route runs. So we'll change it up to PSX Thorpe to Queens, whatever it's called. Well, we'll call it Queens then, shall we? Yeah, Queensborough. That's the fella. Right, there we go. You can see the AI has already worked out how to do a route round the block there, and at the other end, it is, as predicted, doing a U-turn in the middle of the street. Absolutely dandy. The last thing that we're going to need here is a depot so we can actually buy some vehicles. So let's grab our road depot. Using M and N, it's harder to say than you think it is. You can rotate that around, plunk it in there, and you are good to go. So we'll now buy some vehicles. We'll buy vehicles, passenger, stagecoach. Now, given the distances involved, we're going to want a few stagecoaches, but we don't want them all at once. So we'll start with 4, and when they come out of the door here, as they surely will in a moment, we'll select all of those vehicles and then assign them to PSX Thorpe Queens. As they come out, 2 will go one way, 2 will go the other way, once we unpause the game, which is a thing to do at this point. Yeah. There we go. Trotting on out there. And this is how the game works, is it will try and balance out the load between your vehicles as much as it can. In fact, it might send 3 up the long way there. Nope, this time it has split them 50-50. And because the depot is far closer to Thorpe than it is to Queenborough. Right, as you can see, this has already started attracting some interest. We've got a little yellow dude over the top of the stop, and we've got 1 whole person waiting. Perfect. Now that'll be absolutely dandy. Now that's going to take some time to bed in. And the other thing to keep in mind here is the amount of turnaround time that it takes one of these vehicles to complete a loop. So to go, or even to just go from stop to stop, we're going to be talking multiple months for it to make that journey. Ignore the timing, right? Ignore the fact that days are ticking past every couple of seconds. That is just an arbitrary measure to keep the game progress ticking along, while at the same time giving you a read on how long it takes to get from point A to point B. Now, obviously, you can play with time sliders and all of that kind of business to slow things up, speed things down. Yeah, that's the right way around. And that's just personal preference. If you want to rattle forward into the future, be my guest. But right now, we'll keep it at standard everything as far as possible. So there we go. Our first vehicle has got their 3 passengers on board. The second one will wait for 30 seconds or so before setting off. Unlikely to pick up any passengers, but this route is going to take a while before it starts to get much interest. Now, while that's happening, we're sat on 4.8 million quid in our company finances. And if we bring those up, we'll see that so far our road earnings have been none. Obviously, we haven't made any deliveries. But we've already paid some vehicle maintenance. We've already paid for infrastructure maintenance. That's a cost that's going to keep mounting up until we start paying that back using our vehicles. You want at least a good number of vehicles on this route, and I'll show you exactly how to figure out the right kind of number, in order to offset the maintenance that you're incurring. The bigger problem, however, is that 5 million quid that we started off with, that was a loan. So we're paying interest on that loan at all times. Every month that ticks past, we pay a bit more interest. And so we need to be earning enough to cover both the interest costs and the maintenance costs. Running just a couple of wagons is not going to offset those. Sitting on 4.8 million quid in the bank is doing me no favours because I'm paying interest on all of it. Let's have a look for a freight line. Now, freight is... it's actually simpler than you think it's going to be. We're looking for either food or construction materials to begin with, because they're by far and away the simplest to complete. They're not the most profitable you can do in the early stages. That one is reserved for oil, and we'll have a quick peek at that later on. So what we're after is a food processor like this one and a field like that one that are not too far apart. And what we've got here is quite a useful little route. It's not perfect, though. Perfect would be if Chatteris here, which demands food, were somewhere situated in the middle. That way we could do a run on the way back. Because running food up to here to be processed means that we're going to be running empty on the way back and therefore make no money. The dream is to run with freight on board in both directions and to make money from it. Obviously. Yeah, no, that's where the dream resides. So we take your time, look around the map, and see if you can find something that's going to deliver against that objective. So Faversham also has an opportunity. We can go from the quarry here out to the Faversham Construction Materials plant number 2. Catchy. And that's a nice short route. Long enough to make us some money, but short enough so that these horse-drawn wagons that we're using are not going to take forever and a day to get there. But again, there's nothing on the return leg. So it is going to be a one-way. I don't think there is one. No, I don't think we've got a ready opportunity to make serious money here. But that's okay, because we can make cash just off a regular supply. Now, I like the route length that we've got going on here. It is a good shake apart. So let's get this rolling. Now, when you're picking up freight, you're going to want to use a proper freight terminal. Right, here we go. Truck station. Now, when you're placing your truck station, you can move it as far as you like away from the supplier, as long as the supplier stays in white, because that shows that it's in the catchment radius. Moving it further away like that doesn't affect your profits. What it does do is it shortens your journey time. Same profits, shorter journey, which means more profits. So we'll place this first one in there. And then the same is true at the other end of the run as well. So we could run our freight out to, wait for it, about there. Okay, as you can see, these are not inexpensive. At about 100,000 a go. You want to try and get it right first time. You can double check that you are still in range after placing something by clicking on the stop and making sure that that highlights correctly. All right, we're good here. So in theory, what will now occur is we'll pick up crops from the farm, we'll run them down the road, we'll drop them off at the production plant here. That will turn them into food, and if we were going to deliver that food to somewhere, it would drop the food off, ready to be picked up from this stop. So much like we did with the passengers, we now want to set up a route for this, and this is going to be a goods. So I use FRT for freight. And that's going to be, or I can't remember where it was, Chatteris. Let's chat, yes, Eris, yes, food. Okay, right, and we'll go from here, yeah, out to there. Job done. Okay, that one's now good to go. Easy stuff. And then we'll place our depot, like so. Once again, we're going to buy vehicles. This time around, we're going to buy 8. To get us started, because the flow of goods will be significant. You kind of go, well, how do you know if you're placing 4 or if you're placing 8? Experience. Experience is what teaches me the number to go to start with. And 8 is not going to be enough. We're going to run a lot more than that pretty quickly. Get yourselves to work. So unlike passengers, this particular route is going to send everybody out to the start point in order to go and make a pickup. The game recognises that there is absolutely no point in sending them to the delivery end, because they're not actually picking anything up from there. And we've got our little wagon train rolling. And as you can see, the line has kicked into life immediately, because it now recognises that there is traffic coming to go to pick up the freight. Now, each wagon can carry 4, so that is 4 wagon loads already. It will be slightly higher than that by the time we get there. I'll now roll this forward a little bit so that we can evaluate whether we've got enough vehicles on our routes or not. Pro tip, we haven't. We're now in Queenborough, where our first passenger vehicles are about to turn up. So here is vehicle number 3 of 4. No, not number 3 of 4, it's road vehicle number 4. Oh yes, it's carrying 3 of 4 passengers. And it's about to roll in, and we'll get a feel for how much profit it's made. Now, obviously, it's only going to make 3/4 of its potential earnings here, but even so, it should offset the $3,971 it has cost to run the vehicle so far. Or it better do, otherwise this tutorial's a load of rubbish. The good news is that we have a bunch of people waiting to travel back the other way. 23, in fact, enough to fill almost 6 carriages. And that is an indicator of how many more we could be running. So there we go. We made 5,900-ish, which has given us an overall profit. That's quite pleasing. The second wagon isn't actually carrying anybody at all, but that's okay. Early stages on a passenger route, it'll take a little bit of time before you get enough people using them. This will now load up and clear off. Go on, you heard me. Load up, clear off. You're full already. Why are you waiting? Go on, get out of here. Madam, you appear to have trapped your dress in the door. I hope it wasn't an important dress. So we can see already that these two have made their successful run. If we head up to the other end, which is this way, the other two are still having some way to go. How are we looking there? 4 of 4 on that one. Nice. And no, we talked to a passenger. Well, that's promising. Oh no, that's a civilian vehicle. Oh no. Then this one's carrying 4 of 4 as well. Great. So we could double up the number of vehicles we're running there without any risk of failing to make a profit. So we will do. Let's buy a few more vehicles. We'll go back to passenger, and we're going to buy not 4. We will buy 8. That will take us up to 12 in total, and the upshot should be that will start trundling quite a merry profit quite quickly. As you can see, the stop at the other end at Thorpe is also doing quite nicely in terms of the number of passengers waiting. So that will tick on quite merrily. Let's see how our goods route is getting on. So our first freight wagon here is about to make its first delivery, and remember, we're going to need this to make enough to cover the empty wagon situation that it will have as it heads back up to the farm to pick up another batch of supplies. Well, let's hope that this pays off nicely then. In your own time there, 3,800 it's cost us to keep this in motion so far, and those costs will go up over time. So we've got to keep an eye on that later on. But there we go. That's a handsome amount of profit. This is why freight early on can do you a lot of favours. So 5,200. It's not nothing. It's not brilliant, but that should be pretty adequate for now. And obviously each new wagon coming in is going to make another 5,000 and change. Well, another 9,000 in fact, offsetting its running costs. But it's going to be a close run thing. Whether we could double it up, right? So if we're making 9,000 a run, and it's costing us 3,800 per half leg, well, that's what, 7,600 in total. So completing a lap, they're going to make about 1,500-ish in profit. Okay, it's not great, but it's a good place to start. Now we've got all of our wagons in motion. Are you the last one there? Yeah, you're carrying as well, so that's all solid. We just now need to look at how much supply we've got going on. 90! We've got 90 waiting to be picked up. And this blue exclamation mark here means that they're throwing food away because there isn't enough storage here at the truck stop. Now, we can expand the size of the truck stop by going into configure and then adding additional storage to it. That's a little bit more advanced, but it's an option that you have. It's not something we need right now, so we're not going to bother. Instead, what we'll do is we'll deploy a bunch more trucks because there is a lot more money to be made. Now, it's always worth clicking on the closest road depot to make your purchase. Otherwise, it's possible you'll be buying vehicles from the other side of the map. It's far from ideal. So we're going to buy another, and we've got 8. Right, we'll buy another 22. In no way is that a small investment, but this will put us in pretty good stead. Once again, we'll assign it to the route, and off we trundle. Now that's going to turn a reasonable amount of profit, but it won't. But it will do so very slowly. Horse-drawn wagons not renowned for their speed of motion. Now, the one thing I've been doing wrong so far is I've been sat on a significant amount of budget. And as mentioned before, that significant amount of budget is adding up into interest. That's not helpful to us. That's not what we want at all. So either keep it paid down as low as you can, or spend it. And that's what we're going to do next. Because I hear what you're saying. You're going, yeah, all this trucks business, it's all well and good, but I want to do some trains. Now, when considering a train route, again, distance is going to be important. You don't want them too close together. Instead, you want to find a reasonable distance apart, and the freight line that we're running down here with our food is probably about right, actually, for an early train route. You can see my wagon train there rolling out, beautiful. That's going to turn a handsome amount of money over the course of, I don't know, the next 5 or 10 years. So that's the kind of length that would work well for the slow trains that you get to start with. But obviously, we've already got this one under control. So we're going to go look somewhere else. And I'm going to try and find an oil route to do, because oil has the opportunity to make you significantly more money. Okay, I found us a route. Now, the reason that oil is such a good way to go to start with is you have the raw material that you can then ship to turn the crude oil into refined oil. And then you get a second go on making some more cash by taking that refined oil and turning it into either fuel or plastic. That's the good stuff there. So from the original goods, you can turn it into profit 2 times, and then we can make a drop off. Now this is going to work out very nicely for a little truck run. So we'll run a train from the oil well in Chatteris out to the refinery. We'll then place truck stops next to the refinery to go turn that into fuel, and then on the way back we'll drop it off in Topsham, which will make us even more money. Beautiful. Now this oil route is not going to be cheap to make, because we've got a bridge in there, and that's not inexpensive. The ground is mostly flat, but we've got this bit of hillside action in the way there, and that's going to slow down our progress a bit. So the first thing to do, actually, is to place some road. The way that I tend to do it is I will form a perimeter around the outside of the oil well. Sometimes you won't need to do this, but the reason for doing so will become clear relatively soon. Right, there we go, because I want my station right about there. Now, there is another opportunity here. I might give that a look as well. This is a little bit more expensive than I wouldn't usually... Well, I wouldn't recommend you do this. But if we build ourselves a road bridge across there, this might be 90 grand that I'm just wasting. But we'll see how we get on. The same principles apply as you have with road traffic, in that as long as you've got catchment, you can place your station further away. So that's actually worked out quite well. What I was thinking of doing is placing one of these down the side there, you see, and then doing myself a little rail bridge. Nice. But no, given our trains are quite slow, we'll go from the other side of the river. Now, this is not necessarily the most plausible route you're ever going to see, but it'll do the job. Make sure you place the right kind of station. Numerous are the times that I have placed a passenger station while intending to place a freight station, because, you know, I'm the king of attention to detail. I'm not. You see, that's the joke there. Yeah, I know it's a thin joke, but it's a joke nonetheless. And once again, we're going to try and get this as far from the manufacturer as possible. Now, obviously, if you're building something that you want to look hyper-realistic, you won't want to do that. You'll want to get it close so it looks like it's unloading directly into your factory. But if you're just after profit, which is presumably why you're here, I would imagine, then placing as far away as possible is a good thing. Now, before you start placing track, look at where you're going. It's well worth walking the route, effectively, because what I can see immediately is we've got this lumpy hill bit here. That means it's going to have an increase in tracking cost, but we can work around the outside of it and keep those costs to a minimum. It's a little bit further, but it saves us on our initial outlay. Beyond that, however, bit of tree demolition will do us some good. Cross over the road. This is actually a really, really easy route. It's maybe a little further apart than is ideal, but again, the further it is as the crow flies from the start to the end of the route, the greater the profit you'll make on each unit of cargo that you're carrying. So we will go around the outside of this lump of hill. Now, the other thing to bear in mind with any vehicle is you want to try and keep it on the flat as much as possible. If you are changing grade or elevation as you go, you'll find that early trains particularly will bleed off speed to the extent that they end up walking up the hill. That will probably get us. Yeah, that'll get us that far. Yeah. Well, that's good. It's good. Don't be afraid to just plow stuff in. What I frequently do is I will do an as the crow flies route like that. Right, now this is probably not going to work, but it's going to give me a price example. Now the price example in question includes this ruddy great viaduct, which is not exactly what we want. This is not the kind of expenditure that I'm after at this stage, but it suggests that we are going downhill all the way, and indeed we are. So we're going to be unable to avoid a certain amount of slope as we make our way down to the other stop. Oh well, we're just going to have to live with it. Worse still, it means that our initial oil that we're grabbing, we're taking that uphill. And then when we come back the other way, we'll be running empty. That's not ideal. Yeah, if you were going for an optimal approach here, you would look for the opposite. But this is still good enough to make us some money. Right, now, last thing we need on there is a depot. Now, as before, we're going to want the depot to go down to the supplier first. So we'll stick our depot, we'll put a spur off about there. And I'm going to build it so that I can build a Y junction if I choose to do so. I won't choose to do so, but it gives me the option later on. Spin this around, plant it on the end, and let's get our route locked in. Okay, now, the thing with routes is, or the thing with freight routes particularly, is I can now deliver from Chatteris up to the Topsham oil refinery, and that will work just fine. I don't need to do anything with that oil afterwards. I can just leave it there to fester forever. It will assume a maximum level of demand while I'm just delivering to that factory, and that's pretty handy. Yes, there is more money to be made in then taking those goods further, but you don't have to. It is not mandatory that you do so. Right, this is FRT. Are we going to call it Chatteris? No, we're going to call it Topsham because that's where we're headed. Topsham oil. Right. Let's buy ourselves a train. Go into the buy vehicle section, and obviously right now we've only got one train option open to us, so we'll have one of those. Now what we're doing right now is we're building up our vehicle consist before we buy it. Then we'll go to wagons, and we want tank cars. Each wagon will take different types of goods. Make sure you're buying the right ones. In this case, tank cars. Now, I want 6 on here, which is going to affect the performance. If you hover over where it's saying your power rating, it will tell you what its top speed in different slopes are. And as mentioned before, we are going uphill when we're loaded to start with. So we're going to want to be a little bit careful on that front. But any fewer than 6, and the profits aren't going to be great. So we're still doing 16 kilometers per hour heading uphill, or a little over walking pace. Yeah. Now we've added one more, and that's dropped it to 14 kilometers an hour, and then that's my 6th, which has dropped it to 13. That will be fine. Buy it, please. Drop it on the route. It's not going to be quick, but it is going to make good money. So that's now going to trundle up the hill, and as you can see, the amount of oil we've got coming in is almost enough to fill another train. So you know what we should do? We should deploy another train on this route. Now the problem with that is going to be there's nowhere for these trains to pass each other. So let's get that set up as quickly as possible. We're going to need to double track a section. Oh, this is where the fun comes in. And we want it somewhat near the middle of the line, right? Well, no, because it's significantly faster to go down that way than it is to come up this way. So if anything, we're going to want our double track section around here. Now, when you're placing a second set of track, it will snap alongside by default. Now, you don't want to double track the whole section because this is spending money that you're not going to soon see again. You want just enough to make it work. Now, the further you work, what would you call that? Because it's tighter, right? That makes the point system tighter. This makes it looser, I would imagine. The more gradual, there you go, you make your junction, the higher the speed a train can maintain through it. But there's a good chance that what we're going to end up with here is some kind of queuing scenario. So then we'll place that back on there, and we've got a passing track. Now, your trains aren't going to do this by themselves. You're going to need to tell them to do it. And we do that using signals. So we're going to set this signal to be one way. And by default, all trains wish to drive on the right-hand track. You can force them to drive on the left-hand side, but you might find it easier just to do what the game wants. So we'll put one there. There you go. And then we'll put another line, another signal, I should say, there. Now, I know that's fixed it because I've done this about 1,000 times. But if we now look at the route itself, you'll see the flow of travel, the green stuff. We've got ourselves an uphill and a downhill line now. So that will work out quite nicely. Here's our train. Oh boy. So obviously on the steepest section we're cruising at a massive 11 kilometers an hour, and that's because it's fully loaded. Yeah, I think my passing line, my passing area might need to be even further down the track, but we'll see how we get on. Now, what I don't want to do is set my train in motion too early, my new train, because I'm going to buy another one that looks just like that one. In fact, this goes so slowly it might even be worth buying 3, but let's not go overboard for now. What I want to do is I want to wait for this train to get to about the distance that it's going to take a new train to go from the depot down to this station. That way, they are about as spaced out as it's possible to be in the first instance. Over time, they will figure out how to space themselves, and that will probably be dictated by waiting at signals. We'll see how it goes. So I want to wait for this train here to reach, let's say about there, and then we'll set a second train in motion. Now, we don't want to sit through this in real time, so we'll hit the accelerator, and even though that's a little bit less authentic, it means we don't have to sit around all day waiting for this to happen. So at its slowest point, this train actually dropped to 9 kilometers an hour, which is painfully slow. Better track laying on my part would lead to that being a little bit faster, but that would involve placing a curve around here in order to mitigate the change in height that it's going through. It's not the end of the world. We'll probably still make money, but we want to you want to be efficient as much as possible if you want to make a decent amount of cash. So we're going to build exactly the same train again, although part of me says, why wouldn't you go for a 25 capacity? Well, I'll tell you what, we will go for a 25 capacity because I'm skint. But I won't be skint for long. No, because we're about to arrive at this end. Yeah. All right. Okay. So we don't get the spacing perfect the first time round. That's all fine. When this chap lands, we should generate a decent amount of money. Now, as you can see, it's already cost me 123,000 to keep this running. Crumbs. Yeah. 137 now, but here comes payday, and then it will. This will be the point at which we can either be happy or we can look mournfully at the bad plan that we put into action. All right, we're looking in here for a little bit of floaty text. That was 285,000. Smashing. I'm now going to go buy the other train. Now again, you kind of go, now you're talking. That's some serious money, and you kind of go, well, yes, it is. But at the same time, we have had to pay quite a lot in the running costs for this train. So it's not total victory yet. Buy, please. There we go. And sling this one up the line. There we go. Now, they're going to have to figure out exactly how they should pass one another, but that's all good. How much oil have we got waiting? 268. We could run more trains on here, but that would involve more signalling operations in order to allow those trains to pass one another. And we're not going to talk about that today because that's a whole different topic. What you can do is you can look up Signalling Guide Kernel Failure, and you'll find a very useful video that will teach you exactly how to create enough space to run more trains. Trust me, it's a good video. Lots of people have watched it and they've said, oh, that's quite a simple explanation. And I go, that was kind of the idea. Okay, so we've now spent all of our starting money and we've got a bunch of services in action. It is coming up on the end of 1853, so our network has been running for the best part of 3 years. The trains are only just getting bedded in, but let's see how we're doing. So our road system has made us $97,000 in profit this year. If it's in blue, that means that's profit, which is double. Yeah, now we're talking, which is double the loan amount. So with my road vehicles alone, I am making a bit of money and I'm offsetting the loan interest. This is a good thing. It's not that good a picture yet, though, because I've been spending so much cash that we are ending up with a negative balance each year. To break that down a little further, we can call up the line statistics to see how individual lines are doing. Now, this obviously doesn't take into account all the running costs. Well, no, it does take into account the running costs. It doesn't take into account the loan, so we can see how individual lines are running. Chatter is food. As you can see, we've currently got 80 of 120 crops on board. Not bad. And that's running a $93,000 profit. Our little passenger route is far more heavily loaded, but it's only made us $31,000. The early passenger work isn't going to make you quite as much money as the freight will do. So it's well worth considering freight as your first port of call. Of course, I could make more money on there by simply running more wagons up and down the route. That would work out quite well. Ultimately, it comes down to your personal preference. Now our freight services are about to pass one another. And this is the way round I was kind of hoping for here, is that the empty train is the one waiting at the signal. Obviously, it takes time for a loaded train to get up to full speed, so it's far better that it is the empty, running downhill, that is taking time to get past the signal. But that clearly indicates that my passing place is not exactly set correctly. The optimum position for the passing place is where the trains pass each other without having to use the signals. But these are not perfectly spaced yet. They are now, because this one had to wait at a signal, and therefore it's going to set off as soon as it can. Now the question is going to be, how far up the line will this train get? It's going to wait at the signal. It's going to wait there. Yeah, it's totally going to do it, because that's the slow bit. So actually, my passing place needs to be somewhere else. Intriguing. Right, with both my trains in motion and plenty of wagons on the go, I've now got as much money coming in as it's possible for me to have. My bank account's balance is in the red. I can't spend any more. I'm going to roll it forward by 15 minutes and see where we get to. Okay, we're now in 1857. The only year that's ticked off at the front end of our profit graph here is 1853, which is when I last spent a significant amount of money. Now you can see that we've actually been in a positive balance situation every year since then, easily offsetting the amount of loan interest that we're paying back. We've got £500,000 in the bank again, and I'm sitting on it, which I shouldn't do. What I should do is repay £500,000 off my loan until I decide to spend it. When I decide that I need to build something new, I'll take the money back out again. It does us no favours to be sat on that kind of bank balance, because it's just going to cost us interest. I spent $83,000 on elongating the passing track here so that no train has to wait at any time at all. Trial and error will get you to that point. And my next move would probably be to add 1, maybe 2 more trains to this line. That will need a little bit more double tracking and a bunch more signals placing in order to make it work. But the upshot in profit should be quite handsome. If we look at the lines, you'll see that our food line is still doing around 90,000 over the course of a year, while the oil train is now doing the best part of $250,000, and our little passenger route is doing somewhere in the 50,000 range. That will do nicely. So what should you do next? More of the same. There will come a point quite quickly where you are making enough money at enough speed in order to be able to build whatever you like, wherever you like. But these fundamentals should be enough to ensure that you're always able to make at least some cash to keep rolling. Let's jump on board the train here and ride it the rest of the way. I hope this guide's been useful to you if you have been struggling with transport fever. It is quite straightforward once you know a few tricks to get started with. I've been Colonel Failure. I make regular series on transport fever, and if you want to tune in for them, why not subscribe to this channel? There are far more harmful things you could do to yourself, and I would like to see you turn up in the future telling me how I'm getting it wrong. Thanks very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Cheerio.